Taskmaster is a show that I can confidently say is one of the best I've seen in a long time. It's a game show, but not like any other you've probably seen before. The premise is simple. 5 entertainers participate in a series of challenges that are pointless, but they're all trying to win points doled out by the Taskmaster himself. The person who wins the most points in a given episode is declared the winner and gets to take home prizes from a selection of items that the contestants brought in for the first challenge. But the real fun of the show isn't the points, or even about winning the trophy at the end of the series, which is a replica of the Taskmaster's head, by the way. It's about the sheer absurdity and hilarity of the challenges and the creative ways in which the contestants try to complete them. These challenges range from ridiculous to the seemingly impossible, and it's always a joy to see how the contestants approach them in their own unique and often bizarre ways. The show has been a huge success in the UK where it originated, and has even spawned international spin-offs in countries like New Zealand, Norway, Finland, Sweden, and the United States. Unfortunately, the American version of the show didn't quite capture the same magic as the original, and it wasn't well received either. Today I want to delve into the many reasons why I believe the show failed here in the States, and what could have been done to make it successful as the original. There are several reasons why a British series may not be as successful in the United States as they are in the UK. Cultural differences such as differing humor, values, and societal norms can make it harder for a show to connect with an American audience. The high level of competition in the US media market can also make it difficult for a new show to break through and find an audience. Also, a show might not be widely available or heavily promoted in the US, which can hinder its ability to gain a following. Finally, the quality of a show can also play a role in its success, as poor writing, acting, or production values can lead to a show not being well received. As we all know, the UK and US have a long history of adapting each other's successful TV shows. From The Office to Veep, Shameless to House of Cards, and even Loose Women to The View. These spin-offs have been huge hits. But not all spin-offs are created equal. While some manage to capture the magic of their original counterparts, others have fallen flat on their faces. Take Broadchurch and Grace Point, for example, or Skins and the IT Crowd. Even the mighty Law and Order couldn't escape the spin-off curse. So what was the problem? Well, oftentimes it's because these formulas changed too much, and that's exactly what happened with the US adaptation of Taskmaster. While the UK version was a hit, the US version just couldn't hold a candle to it. The most glaring difference of Taskmaster US was that the length of the episode was shortened from 1 hour to 30 minutes. Now this might not seem like a big deal, but it actually had a huge impact on the show. First of all, the prize tasks were shortened from 5 prizes to just 1. This means that only one contestant had something at stake rather than all 5. This changed the dynamic of the competition and made it feel less exciting. This also caused a lack of time for banter between the entertainers and hosts. In the original, there was enough time for them to get to know each other and build rapport, which made for some great moments on the show. The shortened episodes meant that we didn't get to learn as much about the cast. In the original format, we had more time to hear the weird stories and get to know the contestants better. We built this weird Taskmaster lore up, and it was one of the best aspects of the show, and it was a shame to miss this so much in the US version. First of all, it's important to note that Reggie Watts and Greg Davies are 2 very different comedians, with different styles and approaches to comedy. While Greg Davies is known for his powerful, sardonic presence, Reggie Watts is known to be more offbeat, and his style clashed a bit with the position as Taskmaster. He also seemed a bit unsure of himself at times, not knowing how to score contestants for points, when Greg is more direct. It's worth noting that as the show went on, Reggie Watts seemed to find his stride and become more comfortable in the role of host, but by then it was kind of too late. Reggie just wasn't the best choice for the host here. There were many people who felt the same. On the Taskmaster Reddit, I've seen suggestions for late-night comedians like Conan O'Brien or John Oliver. And don't get me wrong, they could make great hosts for Taskmaster, and it would be interesting to see how they would fare on the show and how they would interact with Alex Horn, the co-host/sidekick. And I do appreciate the suggestions, but I think it would be the best choice just to have Greg and Alex host the show. I think it would be so cool to see how they would mock and satirize the American culture on the show, especially since Americans can't handle British sarcasm at all. One thing that sets Taskmaster apart from other game shows is that the contestants are usually comedians or entertainers who are mostly not well known to the general public. This can be a bit of a drawback for some viewers who don't know who the contestants are, but for me it's actually one of the things I love about the show. I enjoy being introduced to comedians and entertainers I might not have discovered on my own, and I found that I often come to love the strangers and their strangeness. However, the limited time on the US show means that we don't get to learn as much about the contestants as we like. This can sometimes make some of the contestants seem boring, like Dylan Francis and Freddie Highmore, or overly competitive, like Kate Berlant. Others, like Lisa Lampanelli, come across as just plain rude. Ron Funches, on the other hand, was a standout on the US adaptation of the show. He was such a sweetheart and brought a much-needed sense of fun and positivity to the competition. One of the things that I found a bit frustrating about the US adaptation of Taskmaster was that the contestants seemed too competitive. Outside of Ron, the show felt a bit too serious. I think this might have something to do with the fact that Americans tend to take everything a little too seriously when it comes to competitions. When I watched the UK version, I noticed that most of the contestants are much more laid back and don't seem to care much about winning. Liz Tarbuck, for example, made Alex sit on a cake to show her love for the Taskmaster, and Rod Gilbert kept sending in the same embarrassing picture of the Taskmaster just because it was funny. Trying too hard can be funny if you end up failing miserably because of it, otherwise it's just not enjoyable to watch. Now, I'm not one to criticize other people's comedy style, most times, but Lisa Lampanelli she just left a really bad taste in my mouth, if I'm being honest. First of all, she reminded me a lot of Ian Sterling or Guy Williams if you watch the New Zealand version. And these are comedians who rely heavily on being abrasive and offensive just for the sake of it. However, unlike these two, Lisa Lampanelli didn't get any sort of redemption arc or growth as a character. It's one thing to be edgy and controversial, but it's another thing to be entirely mean and unpleasant for no reason, especially to the host. I'm sure some people might find her comedy style amusing, but for me it was exhausting, and I had to fast forward through a lot of her segments because I couldn't handle the constant negativity. It just made me cringe. And the worst part was, she was especially mean to Alex. It seemed like bullying, and not just a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, but mean for the sake of being mean kind of way. And when juxtaposed against Ron, who was kind and positive, Lisa Lampanelli's behavior seemed especially evil. First, let's take a look at Comedy Central's history. In the early mid-2000s and 2010s, the network was home to some of the most popular and beloved American comedy shows like The Chappelle Show, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, The Colbert Report, and South Park. However, in recent years, it seems like Comedy Central has lost its touch, with many of its current offerings being reruns of old shows like The Office and South Park. Now, don't get me wrong, there have been some great shows that have aired on Comedy Central in the past decade, such as Drunk History, Broad City, Key and Peele, Workaholics. But in 2019, it just didn't seem like the best platform for a new show like Taskmaster, especially considering that many Taskmaster fans in America discovered the show through YouTube clips. A large portion of the fan base consumes online media, rather than through traditional cable networks. In fact, I personally haven't had cable in 5 years and rely on streaming services like Netflix and Hulu to watch my favorite shows. This trend is also evident in the success of British imports and rehashes on American streaming platforms, like Netflix and Amazon Prime. Look at the Great British Bake Off, Love Island, and The Circle. These shows have all found huge audiences in the United States, and it's likely because they are easily accessible online. So when it comes to the Taskmaster, it just makes more sense to air the show online where it's easily accessible to a wider audience and can be easily shared and discussed on social media platforms like Twitter. While Comedy Central might have been a great home for American comedy in the past, in today's digital age, it just didn't seem like the best choice for Taskmaster. American humor is varied and changes from coast to coast and even state to state. It's important to note that the United Kingdom has a more incestuous comedy scene. It seems like everyone knows everyone else and appears on each other's shows regardless of their style of comedy, ethnic background, age, race, or sex. On the other hand, in America, it's common for comedians to have very specific niches and subcategories. For example, if you're a fan of Kevin Hart, you might not be a fan of Jeff Foxworthy. This means that it can be difficult to cover the entire United States in one comedy show. And even if you manage to gather a diverse cast of up-and-coming comedic talent, you have to consider the fact that humor from LA or New York might not appeal to most Americans. This is especially true for people like, in Kansas, who might not find bi-coastal millennial humor funny. This is where a show like Taskmaster usually shines. It's a great equalizer that it doesn't matter who you are or what you do to be great at the show. In fact, the more insane you are, the better it is for the audience and the Taskmaster. One issue was the lack of creative control given to Alex Horne, the creator of the original UK version of Taskmaster and the host. In the UK version, Alex had a lot more say in how the show was run, and it was a big hit. However, in the American adaptation, Alex didn't have as much control, and many fans felt that the show lost some of its magic as a result. Another problem was with the format of the show. In the UK version, the tasks were creative and unique, and the contestants were really able to showcase their personalities. In the American version, however, the tasks were very generic and they felt like rehashes of the British versions, and the contestants didn't have much of a chance to stand out. All these factors combined made the show difficult to watch, even with its short runtime. However, I still have hope that there will be another chance at an American adaptation of Taskmaster. I believe that the show has the potential to be a hit, especially if Alex is given more creative control. I think a 1-hour special is better for the US format and humor. A New Year's Eve type of special would be a great way to come back and have Taskmaster in the US. One, because nothing is on TV during the holiday break, and two, this can draw in more famous comedians or even celebrities that can't do a longer commitment due to scheduling. If you haven't seen the original UK version of Taskmaster, most seasons are available on YouTube, and I'll include it in a link below. I think it's worth the watch. So if you're a fan of game shows or just want to see something a little different, give Taskmaster a try. I don't think you'll regret it, but just not the US version.